In understanding that many of you in the room are really focused on drug discovery and clinical trials and getting drugs to FDA approval, I'd like to take just 15 minutes to switch gears and talk a little bit about some of the considerations that you should be thinking about as you look to commercialize your products, especially as they apply to access programs. And my talk title today is How to Integrate Critical Access Services from Manufacturer to Patient. Again, and just to clarify, these are brand support programs for patients and healthcare providers. So what we'll talk about is how to design that right fit program for your particular product. Determining what patient services are critical to the success of your product, what financial services may be required to ensure optimal access for your product, and finally, the opportunities within the third-party logistics and distribution channels. So with all the change in dynamics and shift in priorities in the market, designing that right program becomes very complex. There's price scrutiny that's been, a problem for over 10 years now or more, patient affordability challenges and considerations, identifying those appropriate patients for your product, the Affordable Care Act, what will be the impact of the Affordable Care Act on your particular products and your brand support programs, supply chain issues, and finally payer pressures. These obviously show up as specialty tiers on your formularies in addition to restrictions, prior authorizations that really just slow up speed to therapy. So all of these factors are really forcing biopharma to go beyond traditional commercialization and really think more about these patient-centric programs to help commercialize your products. So it's really about identifying what services your product requires. And there's a plethora of services that you may or may not even be aware of. Nurse support training, copay programs, access to your providers and patients that you can only achieve through these type of brand support programs. Customized distribution programs, specialty pharmacy, just to name a few. So as you think about the services or the tools that are available, the whole patient support program really begins with a brand assessment. All of these factors really present different services that are required to your program. For example, formulation. If your product is an oral, self-administered, or physician-administered IV, they all present different challenges to commercialization for your product. For example, if you have an oral product, do you have the services in place to ensure compliance? Do you have refill checks? Do you have dosing checks within your program to ensure that your patients have that available to them through therapy continuation? Self-administered products. Does your product require in-the-field nurse support to go in and do injection training? These are all services that can be integrated within one program, so it's one-stop shopping for your patients and healthcare providers. Is it a physician-administered product? So do you have the appropriate level of reimbursement support so that your physicians obtain the appropriate reimbursement? What is the cost of your product, and how do you set up the appropriate affordability assistance programs within your brand support program? Is your drug chronic? Is it taken chronically? Again, compliance and adherence are services that you'd want to incorporate. If your product is acute, obviously accelerated time to therapy is going to be more important than compliance and adherence. So these are services that you'd want to build in. Oh, we have some technical difficulties there. The need for, let me just skip through here. Okay. The need for patient education or counseling, again, that's self-injection, training, or side effect management. So having clinical nurse supporting your patient program could be important. What is the patient demographics? So if you have a pediatric population, middle-aged population, elderly population, really ensuring that your program meets the needs of your particular population. Is there an opportunity for your product to have unique distribution? So there's alternative ways to distribute products in the channel. Other unique product requirements, such as REMS, you want to make sure that your REMS programs or requirements are integrated into your program, and safety concerns or ability for patient surveys. These programs really, again, create that connection of you to your patients. So in addition to the brand characteristics or attributes, you also want to take a look at your stakeholders. So what are your patients, healthcare providers, and of course your internal stakeholders looking for you to achieve through these patient-specific, product-specific programs? Patients are obviously looking for that right fit as far as communication and access. Your physicians are looking for a program that balances value with internal efforts. So you want to make sure that your program's easy to access through your enrollment process. And then finally, your internal stakeholders, of course, are looking to achieve that dosing compatibility and adherence with your product. So all these factors go into consideration as you design your integrated custom program. And again, these programs are widely used among specialty products, but really believe that the integrated custom programs that can be developed are especially important to orphan drugs and rare diseases. Here's an example of a program that really takes from prescribing all the way through. So, you know, intake occurs, basic questions, reimbursement, benefit investigations, prior authorizations. Is there a need for a copay assistance? Do you need foundation assistance? Is there a need for patient assistance? Is there a timing issue where you really need to get to a patient quickly in the delivery of the product, in which you need a quick start program? Again, these are all services that can be integrated through one patient support center. So as you look at your access considerations to integrate within your program, so third-party logistics provider, do you need order-to-cash services? Is it a frozen product? Is it a cold chain product? Is it an ambient product? Distribution, is traditional wholesaler the best way for your product to get to the market? Or would a direct-to-physician be applicable? This primarily is with your buy and bill products. Specialty pharmacy, is it a single exclusive specialty pharmacy or a network of specialty pharmacies? Really deciding that right fit program for your particular product. And then of course payer challenges, and I'll say it over and over, you need to ensure that you have the appropriate level of reimbursement support to ensure that your customers are getting reimbursed appropriately. Affordability considerations, so really your patient demographics, in addition to the cost of your product, will dictate your copay option. If you have a commercial insured population, manufacturer-sponsored copay cards are the way to go. There's many different designs that you can choose, and this is really depending upon your payer coverage or your, again, patient demographics. So for example, you could have a copay program that establishes a set amount that your patient will pay no more. So that could be a $50 payment where that's the threshold for your payments, and then pharma picks up the rest of that copay. Or it could be an established set amount that you're willing to pay from a manufacturer standpoint. So manufacturer pays $50 of the copay, patient responsible for the rest. The design of this commercial copay really depends on your product and your profile. If you are federally insured primarily, of course, the foundation becomes important, and understanding what foundations to work with that will best support your needs. And then finally, uninsured, so establishing that patient assistance program that ensures all patients have access to your product. And this is really, you know, in collaboration with your service provider, determining what are those criteria that a patient has to meet in order to qualify for free product. And then, as we know, healthcare reform is coming quickly, and its impact probably will have an effect on the mix of these programs. So understanding where the healthcare exchanges are going to fall, whether they fall under commercial or they fall under federal, depends on how your manufacturer copay card or your foundation utilization will change. But we don't see any of these copay options going away. So finally, adherence, very important, and how adherence and compliance is achieved with your patients is really through that patient connectivity. And how you do that is with the appropriately defined enrollment form. So really identifying what is that opt-in that you need that patient to opt into to open that channel of communication. The frequency of communication, the level of communication varies with products, and that's really, as clinicians, you want to make sure that the input of clinical trials goes into your compliance programs. So it's understanding if you see in clinical trials that, come day 30, things get tough for that patient, you want to make sure that your compliance outreach goes to the patient on day 25 and says, you're doing great with therapy, here's some education for some side effects that you may be experiencing in the next week or so. The compliance and adherence programs, again, it's all surrounding the touch points that you're able to achieve with the patient based on the opt-in of these programs. So then finally, data. In our data-driven world, it's important to really get a pulse of your product, and these programs are able to achieve that, again, because they're integrated through third-party logistics all the way through to patient compliance. This is your pulse of your product and how you're doing. So you get program data, compliance data, and you can also do surveys through this connectivity. So, in conclusion, commercialization doesn't begin with FDA approval, obviously. These programs really need to be considered 12 months to 18 months prior to approval to ensure that all considerations are put in place and that the services that your particular product, patient population require are indeed in your program. Choosing the right partner to pull your product through these access challenges is critical. And in the end, your program should ensure that your patients can obtain the medications that improve their lives with minimal barriers. So I thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference.